are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Ruff.
And I'm Aviva and
We're the hosts of the Dressage Today podcast, where you can find us talking about anything and everything dressage related. Our conversations span the world of dressage, from leading riders to local level dressage heroes. We're talking training advice, showing tips, and sharing stories to inspire your own dressage journey. So tune in, then tack up. Welcome to Season 4 of the Dressage Today podcast. Today we'll be hearing from Alison O'Dwyer, who has won the dressage division of the Retired Racehorse Project's Thoroughbred Makeover 3 times. We are looking forward to hearing what she likes about riding thoroughbreds in dressage. But before that, the dressage community was saddened to hear of the passing of Elizabeth Madlener. And Aviva, you rode with her for several years. So could you maybe share some memories of her that stand out to you?
Yeah, I was very lucky, Stephanie, to work with Elizabeth for about 3 years. She was a pioneer of dressage. She wrote articles. She wrote books. She was a senior judge. She was a member of the L faculty. She was passionate, absolutely passionate about dressage and dressage done well. Interestingly, I didn't meet her here in Maryland. I was going through the L program, and she was one of my instructors in Wisconsin. And, you know, it's a tough program. And we had this one Frisian come in the ring and ride a training level test. And at the end of the test, Elizabeth was talking about this lovely horse's uphill movement and, you know, high scores for the balance and all of that. And I, you know, very tentatively raised my hand and said, you know, Frisians tend to be uphill. That's sort of breed specific, but they also tend to have kind of short necks. And this one had a short neck. And I wonder, in, you know, training level, we want a horse that's reaching out and through the back and longer in the neck. So how do you address that versus the uphill balance? And there was dead silence. And, you know, the other 9 people in the group are like scooting away from me because I'm toxic at this point. And I thought, okay, I just failed the L program. And Elizabeth looked at me and she nodded her head and she says, you know, that's really valid. How about if we just agree to disagree on this one? And I thought, I really like this woman. So I made arrangements once we both got back to Maryland to start taking lessons with her. And I can't tell you how much I learned. She expected perfection from her riders, but she was patient with the horses. She was still riding when I rode with her, and this was maybe 15 years ago. And she said every day she threw her leg over a saddle, she learned something new from the horses, which I thought was incredibly profound and poetic and just stunning. She is the first person who ever taught me about the biomechanics of the horse and the rider. She talked about things like seat bones. And I remember I used to keep this series of emails that I would send to her. And it was so funny. This is part of our learning process. I know I'd send her an email, you know, in January, and I'd say, Elizabeth, I had a great ride tonight. Today, I finally found my left seat bone. And then, you know, 6 months later in July, I'd send her another email and I'd say, oh my God, Elizabeth, I had the best ride today. I really found my seat bones for the first time. And, you know, this went on for 3 years. I kept finding my seat bones, you know, because it is a process. But, you know, she was the one who explained to me about why the aids make sense. And, you know, if you use your balance and your position, you enable the horse to do it correctly. And why try to reinvent the wheel and explain something to the horse when you can just put them in a place to do it? She was really pretty amazing. I think that she's leaving an incredible legacy. And I know I've spoken to quite a number of her other students since I learned of her passing, and we're all devastated. She was part of a small but powerful cadre. She and Linda Zhang, Linda Oliver, who brought Bent Lenquist to this area. Right. it's a real loss, and I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to learn with her through the L program. She was brilliant, and to learn with her as a rider. You know, it was amazing. In the L program, one of the things that we did in the section that I did with her, we judged 10 tests this was back in the day of training level test 4, first level test 4, and second level test 4. And we did them, you know, in writing, and we submitted them to Elizabeth. And Elizabeth went over all 30 tests for all 10 riders and made notes for every single movement score, commenting on our scores versus our comments and the further remarks. I mean, the attention to detail, the commitment to creating good judges. She was something very special.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, her influence will continue to be felt.
I think so. Yeah.
Through people like you.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
For 2023, we continue Aviva's Ask the L segment. So today's question was submitted by Jamie. Are you judged on what happens between the movements, or is it just the movement itself?
So this is like the best question ever, Jamie. Thank you so much for asking it. So the technical answer is that the stuff that happens between the movements is called a modifier, and another modifier is the quality of the gaits. So if you do a movement really well, but your horse doesn't have great gaits, that, you know, changes the score. If you, you know, prepare really well, obviously you ride the thing better. This is my little get up on my soapbox issue. So I call the stuff between the movements the connective tissue. And if you think about what connective tissue is in a person or a horse, it's the stuff that holds everything together. And that's what I think the stuff between the movements really is. It's the stuff that holds the movements together. So if you come down center line and you make a straight center line, but you don't prepare properly with half halts to do a halt, and your horse flails around and falls on the forehand, you have technically ridden the movement, you've halted, you've done a straight center line, but you haven't done it very well. And the reason that you haven't done it very well is that you haven't prepared for it. If you go through a corner and your horse is off balance, and you then ask for a leg yield or a half pass or a shoulder in, you're setting your horse up for failure. So the stuff that happens between the movements is not technically judged, but it is what enables you to do things well. And that's why not necessarily riding tests all the time is a good thing to do, but riding the movements and preparing into the movements is so valuable. When you see a test that has flow, that's seamless, where the rider and the horse seem to always be ready for what's next, you know that the rider has practiced riding the connective tissue and hasn't just ridden movements over and over and over again. When I prepare my students to show what I tell them that I want them to do, and this is something that I think we all learned from Jane Savoy, is the idea of visualizing. And I tell them to imagine themselves in the arena and to ride the test. And that's not A down center line, X halt, salute, C track left, E 20-meter circle. It's I'm heading down center line. I'm staring the judge right in the eyes. I have my legs evenly on my horse. I'm balanced in my rein connection. I know my horse, and I know that I need to do 3 subtle half halts before I sink into the saddle and ask for the actual halt. I'm now putting both reins in my right hand, dropping my left hand. I'm picking up the reins. I take a breath. My leg goes on. I'm thinking forward, still looking at the judge. Closing my right leg because I know I'm preparing to turn left and I don't want to drift. So that's your connective tissue, right, Stephanie? That's the stuff.
Yeah.
And if you do that in your mind, I do it before I go to sleep. 1 5-minute test can take you 10 to 15 minutes to ride in your head.
Yeah.
But you've ridden it now how many times before you actually get into the ring? And your body really doesn't know the difference between visualizing and doing things live.
Right.
So all of that little teeny tiny preparation, riding the stuff between the movements is what creates the balance and the suppleness of the movements themselves. So are you being judged on it? Kind of no. Are you being judged on it? Kind of yeah, because that's what frames your movements. That's what makes the movements good. So that was a great question, and it's one that I was very happy to answer. Thank you.
Yeah. And you know what? It's interesting that this comes up and you talk about this, because at the USDF Trainers Conference that I was just at, there was a lot of talk about the preparation for the movement, and then finishing the movement, and how, it's exactly what you were saying, and how that is all important, and you need to do all of it, and you need to do all of it well for just, the movement. Yeah. So that was one of the things that was discussed numerous times throughout the 2 days. So, there you go.
Timely question. There we go.
Very timely. We couldn't have done that better if we tried.
Absolutely. Well, yay.
Learn from top experts with Dressage Today's complete video-on-demand dressage training online resource. Whether you're looking to better your basics, receive classical dressage training, or polish your Grand Prix movements, Dressage Today On Demand's 3,800 plus training videos can help you reach those goals. Learn more by going to ondemand.dressagetoday.com. Alison O'Dwyer is originally from Colorado, where she started taking consistent riding lessons at 6 years of age. By the time she graduated high school, she had competed in 2 eventing CCI 2-star events. Taking a gap year after graduation, she headed to Kentucky to work for WEG silver medalist Dorothy Trapp Crowell, where Alison made huge strides in her horsemanship and riding ability. Under Dorothy's tutelage, Alison was able to compete up to the 3-star level. In Kentucky, she gained an interest in dressage and achieved her USDF Bronze Medal with the help of Reese Koffler-Standfield. After graduating from the University of Kentucky, Alison went to work for Michael Pollard, where she trained on her own horse and groomed professionally for his string of international eventers. Soon after retiring her last upper-level horse, she found her current niche in retraining ex-racehorses for eventing and dressage. Her recent success has been highlighted by the Retired Racehorse Project's Thoroughbred Makeover, where she's won the dressage competition 3 times. This year, Alison has 2 more exciting prospects for the competition, and she recently relocated to Wellington, Florida. Alison, it is so great for you to join us today. We are very happy that you took some time out to talk to us.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Well, our first burning question is that, since your niche these days are thoroughbreds, how did you get involved in thoroughbreds, and why did you get involved in thoroughbreds?
I think it started pretty early. My first horse was a thoroughbred mare. And then from her, I moved on to another thoroughbred that was my first FEI eventing horse. And he was just so cool. And he was actually Montana bred, which is so interesting now that I know more about thoroughbreds. I'm like, what does that even mean? But
right, probably a little different.
Thoroughbreds in Montana.
Yes, and like race horses and a breeding program, and I don't. Wow. It might be all but extinct now, but he was, this was back in like 2003, so it was like a while ago. But Yeah, so I started with thoroughbreds, and then I got another thoroughbred after that. And, I grew up in Colorado, and I think Colorado kind of has a limited pool of horses and horse people. So you kind of just get what you can. It's kind of the way it works out there. And I moved to Kentucky to take a gap year and was introduced to Dorothy Crowell, formerly Dorothy Trapp. And she was quite famous and well known for taking her off the track thoroughbreds all the way to Burley and badminton and the World Equestrian Games. She had Molokai. And she just really helped me with my young thoroughbred gelding that I had at the time, and was very patient with him, and got him and I all the way up to the championship 2-star level, which is now the 3-star level. And she just is very, very, very passionate about the breed. And I was passionate about her. I really turned her into a mentor of mine, and really dedicated every aspect of my life that year to her, and continued to work with her when I started college. So I think we kind of have my two main riding instructors in life to blame. And then not only with them, but being in Lexington, Kentucky, you have tons of opportunities to get horses off the track and meet the thoroughbred people and see the thoroughbred industry. So it's, I think being in that environment is also infectious in a way.
What do you like best about thoroughbreds?
Oh, gosh, I really came to appreciate how smart they were. And I don't think I realized that until I went and worked with some other breeds, working on some other farms. And I did end up with a big Irish eventing Irish sport horse, that was Irish draft crossbreed. And we got along, but not long term. And after him, I was really left wanting another thoroughbred. He was very tough, and he was ridden by a man, and, he didn't have that sensitivity in that respect for me that I was missing, that I had in the thoroughbreds. And, they're just very smart creatures, and they have a lot of self-preservation. And I think I didn't understand that until I went and worked with some other horses, and I was really appreciated the thoroughbred in that regard.
Well, and you are married to a thoroughbred trainer, racehorse trainer. Has that helped you better understand the breed? Yes, and yeah, I would. Or if not, you can say no.
Well, what we do is so different, so I don't think it's really helped me understand horses and the horse in general, but it is great to use him as a sounding board. Or my favorite thing is he's my crash dummy when I get a new one. I don't really like putting that very first ride on them, because a lot of times I just get them off the cuff and I don't know anything about them, and they could have some sort of tick or behavioral issue. And although my last makeover winner, Kubo Cat, he was a very tough horse to start. And I really did use Jerry's experience with thoroughbreds. And because this horse was very particular, and Jerry's insight into him was extremely valuable. Right. But so I guess kind of yes, but he very much respects that what I do is very different than what he does, and I'm the same. And a lot of horses I come across that do have issues on the track, a lot of them don't translate into the show horse world, into the sport horse world. I've ended up getting horses off the track that down the line, jockeys are telling me, oh my God, we drew straws on who had to ride that horse because he was awful. And I was like, well, I just sold him to a 14-year-old girl. He's fine.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I think we both have that understanding too, is a lot of times what I expect from a horse and what he expects from a horse are also very different. And even though it's the same horse, the problems and, not only the problems, but the strengths that horse has isn't always going to translate into the next job.
Right.
How is it different training an off the track thoroughbred versus training just a green horse? And how is it What's it like trying to do dressage with a horse that comes off the track that just wants to run fast?
Yeah. It's a lot of the racehorses, even though I have gotten so many different ones that are different sizes and have different issues, I kind of put them all on very much the same program. My horses really never see a straight line ever again. Okay. And I don't have a hard time telling people that, I'm like, these racehorses have seen enough straight lines to do them, for a while, at least. I understand straightness is a crucial aspect of dressage, but that's the only way the horses go, like, for their whole life. So I work very hard in the beginning to keep them on circles and figure eights and bending and counter bending. And, most of them come off the track very similar to a 2x4. And I'm just up there constantly trying to supple them through their back and their neck, and until they learn, to move off my leg and also to steer off my leg. That's really what we focus on. But what would make them different is, they're exposed to so many things. I'm not having to desensitize them to cars or to, be concerned about things blowing in the wind. Obviously, if something dramatic happens, a horse can spook here or there, but they handle atmosphere very differently from what they've seen. But also, I've kind of been laughing here in Wellington a little bit. If I follow the roads in the neighborhood, I can have dump trucks and all these stuff passing me on the road, and landscapers on mowers, and they don't really care about any of that. But if I'm on the canal and like a turtle jumps into the water, that's really scary. And so the racehorses, they don't really know how to nature very well.
Right.
So that's been kind of funny.
I always get such a kick out of people on who talk about thoroughbreds are so spooky and so hot. And, you're right. What they're exposed to at the track. I mean, I imagine taking one of my warm bloods, I would be dead. Yeah. I mean, again, like, they're so smart. And not only that, but they're handled on the ground so much. Like, not sitting here, like, having to battle with a horse to, like, pick up its foot to pick it out. Like, some of the big green, other breeds, you're just working with them so much on, like, these really simple tasks, like even on the ground, where these thoroughbreds are, and most of them they all load into the trailer really well. I've had a couple difficult ones, but they've been around the block and they've been handled a lot ever since they were babies. And I think that makes a huge difference. Yeah. What do you find the most challenging about working with thoroughbreds?
I don't know. I mean, some of it, I guess, would be breed biased, dealing with, I do a lot of buying and selling. And so when you're trying to sell horses, you're kind of up against, some people that might not be open-minded to them, even though I love dressage and I'm passionate about dressage, and all of my horses are, schooled in that manner. Like, they almost all get bought by eventers. And the eventers get on and they're like, oh my God, it's so broke on the flat. And I'm like, yeah, but like, it's not jumping around 2-6 courses yet or anything. But they all seem very thankful for that when they get purchased. Yeah. But,
I will tell you that several years ago, you were at the makeover and I was judging the dressage portion of the eventing. And I think I placed you first. You had a beautiful horse and a beautiful ride. You're a gorgeous rider. But the thing that really impressed me was I was judging the eventing, and I think I judged 50 horses over the course of the week. And there were probably 5 to 7, and I don't jump and I don't event. I'm a purely dressage person. There were 5 to 7 horses that I would have packed into my car and taken home with me if I could have. And I do a lot of judging and I see a lot of warm bloods, and I can't say that, 10% of the warm bloods that I see, I'd want to bring home. So there's nothing shabby about a good thoroughbred.
Yeah, I think definitely. That's like wonderful to hear, because they have a lot to offer. And, it is sure fun to go to a show. The last winner I had, he only got to one schooling show in Maryland, schooling dressage show. And then I took him to Kentucky the month previous to the makeover, and entered a pretty serious USDF show at the Kentucky Horse Park that is in September, the month before the makeover, which is in October. And he killed it, and it just goes to show you, they can definitely do the job. And I think people, unless you're looking for Grand Prix and wanting to be competitive at Grand Prix and wanting to do it immediately, being open-minded to them is really important, because they are really safe too. A lot of the concerns about the spookiness and that the warm bloods can bring, you're not going to have that same kind of issue with a well-trained thoroughbred.
How do you, I'm always overwhelmed. I see so many videos online of people who have just, bought a horse that's recently off the track. And how can you see the potential for dressage? Given it's there, because they don't look like dressage horses when they come off the track.
No, definitely not. I know. Yeah. And it's I try to, again, about being open-minded, but I do have a type, and I like a big, long shoulder, perfect angle, not, definitely not upright and short, but, long sloping shoulder. That's probably the very first thing I look at. I look at lower limb conformation, just as far as long-term soundness. But again, at this level, at the training, first level, second level, really any of these horses should be able to do the job. And I really believe that, if they have a good foundation and good training from the beginning, they're going to develop the right muscles. So I think I'm pickier than I might give myself credit for, because it just comes very naturally to me. I just have my trainer in my mind being Alison, you have a good eye, own it. You're way pickier than you realize. But in the same sense, and also one of my other, in that same vein, sort of, is I don't look at pedigrees at all. I'm some of these thoroughbred people that do these thoroughbred retraining and selling, they just get really into the pedigrees, and I feel like that just does the horse a big disservice, because the horse is bred to race. And if you're not going to race the horse, the pedigree is not going to tell you anything about dressage, because that pedigree is about racing. And I've seen beautiful horses and not so beautiful horses by the same stallion. And so, I try to really take the horse as an individual and not make too many judgments about it until I get to sit on it a few times. And I do a lot of buying and selling. So, I just try to be quick to know what that horse wants to do in life and where it fits best.
Can you feel anything about the mental capacity of the horse just from a ride once or twice, that this is a horse that will be suited to the rigors of dressage and the discipline of dressage?
I would say so, in the sense that I can poke a lot of their buttons pretty quickly and at least see how they handle it. Again, bending off the leg and how hard is this going to be to teach you? And, what's your sensitivity level? And especially I know my type and I know what I like. And so I can pretty quickly judge that. And I've learned my lesson too. I've learned my lesson as far as trying to fit square pegs into round holes, and I've made that mistake, and I've kept horses too long and tried to, I have this one horse that taught me a lot of lessons, and he was the most difficult horse I ever got off the track. And I went and did eventing, and I finally got that horse to a horse trials. And I think I got a 52 in dressage in eventing. A good score is a 25.
Yes.
Right. And doubled it. And I was crying hysterically. I love to be competitive. I love to at least not embarrass myself. And I was embarrassed. And this is after over a year of training. This was not a horse that I just got off the track yesterday. And I think that was the part that was extra heartbreaking. And And I just tried to fit that square peg in that round hole for a really long time until my wallet finally was like, you can't do that anymore. And I think I sold him to a good spot, but it probably wasn't necessarily the right spot. And then that person thankfully found the perfect spot for that horse. And that horse is kicking butt in jumpers. That horse gets to have his nose up in the air, and he is fast, and he turns fast, and he jumps clean, and he is champion on the Split Rock jumping circuit. And so that horse taught me a lot, to recognize quickly if I'm going to get along with it. And if I'm not, where can I put that horse that's going to be better suited?
Right. I think horses, we've talked about it more than once. Horses will keep you humble. They tend to teach you lessons.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And again, about humility, right? Accept your loss. You're not going to change who that horse is, and he was a very extreme case because, again, at the makeover, it's training level. It's very basic flat work that any horse for any job should be able to do successfully. So that's why I can be successful with many, many types of horses. But that one was a very extreme case where, anyways, but he's living his best life now and he's very good at his job. So
that's good. That's the important thing in the end.
Yeah.
Well, so you've talked a bit about the Thoroughbred Makeover, and that's a program from the Retired Racehorse Project. But there are probably people listening to this podcast that aren't very familiar with it, or they may have heard what it is, but don't really understand. Could you just give us just a little bit of, background on what it is and how you got involved with it?
Yeah, of course. So it is put on by the Retired Racehorse Project, which is an entity on its own. The Thoroughbred Makeover is just something that they do. And it's a really, really big competition in October. You're only allowed less than a year of training on your horse, and it had to have seen a race or at least a workout on a racetrack within a certain time period. And I don't know if it's necessarily modeled after the Mustang Makeover, but it's a similar concept where you take a horse that has a different job and you teach it a new job. And part of what really made me excited about it is I was really ready and appreciative to be judged subjectively. Obviously dressage is a subjective sport, but I had been eventing for so long, and I was kind of disheartened occasionally by seeing people, get around the jumping phases by the skin of their teeth and beat me. And I really wanted to be able to show off the training that I had done in a subjective way where it would be appreciated, instead of just I cleared the fences and I get a blue ribbon. I wanted someone to see what work went into the horse and again, have it be appreciated. So I started doing the makeover for dressage and eventing. And then after having my baby and having a pretty difficult horse that kind of intimidated me, honestly, after my pregnancy and whatnot, I just decided to stick with dressage this most recent year. And I think it definitely paid off because it took a lot of the pressure off to try to get this horse around the jumping phases. And I just could really focus on what I felt good at that time. But it's a really fun competition. It's huge. The divisions are huge. The dressage division, it's over 100 people. And that just really causes me a lot of anxiety because it's 2 days of competition. So if you go on day one and you're in the lead or in the top, you have 50 horses coming in behind you that could knock you down 50 places if they wanted to. And, it's a short-lived success. So, but I tend to take it very seriously nowadays. And I was a bit of a wreck last time just because it's a lot of pressure and it's probably put on by myself at this time. But the divisions are 100 people. For the dressage, you ride training level. It's either test 2 or test 3. I can't remember. I think it's think I keep
It's
thinking
2.
it's, yeah. Okay. I was going to say, I keep telling myself it's test 3, but I think it's test 2. I think I made that mistake last time. I kept like showing test 3 and I was like, oh, Jesus, it's not even the 3rd test. But anyways, and then you get to do the demo, and that's where I have a lot of fun. The demo is just 5 minutes and you can show whatever you want in 5 minutes. So I just eat that up. I love it. You get to be really creative. I mean, yeah, it's so fun. And I get really into it. You know, I make sure to use a coach or a couple of people on the ground. I do ride with Reese Koffler-Standfield. I haven't been able to much because I was based in Maryland, but poor Reese gets hit up like the week before the makeover when I show up early. And I'm like, watch this leg yield. Is this good enough? Can I show this in my demo? Is this a good enough leg yield? I don't think it's good enough. And she's like, oh, Jesus, it's fine. Like, you know, so I think that is beneficial, especially to have eyes on the ground when you're trying to toy with things that are outside of your training level test. Right. So yeah, I have fun. I get really creative. Like one year, my horses, again, like I kind of alluded to in the beginning, I practiced really hard getting them to steer just with my legs and being able to move their shoulder. And I was able to, I did this like free walk across the diagonal and I stayed on the buckle. And as I came to the short side up by the judge, I did essentially like a walking, I guess, pirouette on my hind end, like a turn on the turn on the haunches, like right in front of the vet. And I never picked up the reins.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah. So it was like almost like something you'd see in a Western, you know, I never picked up the reins and I did a turn on the haunches. I walked down a little way and I did a turn on the haunches the other way and I never touched the reins and the horse was, you know, had its head down the whole time. And I just really wanted to show that like my horse was in control and in between my legs, like whether I had a hold of his face or not. And so like I said, I get excited, like that sort of stuff makes me really excited.
Well, and just for our listeners, the Thoroughbred Makeover has a lot of different disciplines that the horses can compete in, which is the other thing. It's eventing and it's dressage and it's show hunters and it's barrel racing and it's Western pleasure and it's trails. And, you know, I think there are 11 different disciplines. And at the end, there's a finale and everybody who's won their different discipline all comes and does a thing. And then the ultimate winner is picked. And it's amazing.
Yeah. There's so much going on and it's a really fun show, even just to go audit and, you know, watch. There's so much action. And another thing too, like, you know, not only are the horses, you know, they see a lot on the racetrack, but before you get there, it's really important to take them and show them and get them out as much as possible because the atmosphere, it's electric. Like when the makeover moves into the Kentucky Horse Park, every aspect of the horse park is in play. I mean, they do fox hunting like in the cross country field and you literally have hounds and like a mock fox hunt galloping by you and you're just like trying to hack to the Rolex ring to like do your dressage test. So, you know, my advice, which I'm sure the makeover people would all resonate, is like to get your horse off property as much as possible before you show up there because a lot of horses can show up to the horse park and kind of lose it a little bit.
It's pretty electric. Just being in the Rolex arena is pretty electric.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah. We get the dressage for eventing as well. And regular dressage, you get to show in the Rolex ring. And then if you make it to the finale, you show in the covered ring. And the covered ring can be really scary because it's a lot smaller and all the people and the vendors and everything is kind of right on top of the arena. And they do allow ring schooling. And I learned my lesson the first year because I didn't use my schooling for the covered ring because it was my first year. I was like, I wasn't even thinking about the finale. I just wanted to survive the first part. And then I made it to the finale and my horse went in there and went, oh, crap. And I went, oh, crap. So I kind of prepare for the finale, whether or not I make it or not, just because I learned my lesson that like, just go ahead and get in there as much as possible. Cause because it's a lot, but it's a really cool show, and they offer cash prizes, which you know, a lot of people at that level don't ever have the chance to compete for money, so that's really fun. And they have a lot of specialty awards, and they pin junior and amateur separately as well. So there's a lot going on there, that's for sure.
It's a super fun week. Whether you're competing or just watching, it is really, I had a blast. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, it's very cool. Are you going to make it this year?
I don't know. They invited me to judge this year, but I had already booked time and I couldn't. So who knows? Maybe I'll see you.
Okay. Fair enough.
Well, so what advice would you give to someone who is considering, buying or trying an off-track thoroughbred?
No, I'm just thinking on where to take that exactly, because, I don't want to frighten anybody, right? Like, and there's nothing to be afraid of. I think, again, like, keep an open mind. And if you have questions, like, don't hesitate to reach out to people. Like, I think horse sport, it always takes a village. And, I love seeing even like professionals at the highest level take lessons, so just not to be afraid to reach out to get help and to take your time, like these, not to be in a rush, I guess, because in some sense, especially if you get a good one that's been around the block and has got a good head on its shoulder, it can be really easy just to like start jumping things. But like maybe your horse doesn't know how to stand at the mounting block. And then, so I have to remind myself that a lot too, is like, hey, if I just sit here and like mount and dismount 100 times until my horse stands at the mounting block and doesn't move, like that was worth it. Yeah. And, because things like that will definitely pay off in the long run. And again, in the same vein of keeping an open mind, like I've had really quiet, downright lazy horses off the track. And I feel like a lot of people don't believe me when I say that. I mean, these horses can completely change. And, just because a horse either raced or didn't race doesn't really say anything about their personality. Sometimes people say, I only want an unraced one because it'll be quieter. Well, I have a 9-year-old multiple stakes winner in the barn that has seen a lot of racing, and she's so good. Like she acts like a 9-year-old should act, like whether she raced or not. Like, she's very quiet and sensible, and, not to read too much into that and to really try to take horses as individuals. Right. Because I get upset, I think, when some people start to throw biases at them. Yeah. Whether it's pedigree or, they're racing, whether or not they've raced and how much and, stuff like that is, there's so many of them. The amount of thoroughbreds that get bred in this country and born every, I think people have to think like statistically, like, a stallion can make 100 babies a year, and that's one stallion, so statistically, like they're not all going to be the same. And, just to keep that in mind. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think the bias is in all the breeds, and that's why I'm so excited that we're talking about non-warm bloods and dressage. There's the bias that because it's a warm blood, it's a great mover, and they're not all great. And I get tired of hearing people say, "Oh, he's such a nice mover for a thoroughbred." And some of the thoroughbreds I judge are way better movers than the warm bloods that I judge, and they have better brains and they're easier. So I think you have to keep an open mind and see every horse as an individual, but particularly the thoroughbreds, because there is a stereotype, and I don't know that it's a viable one.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I like my favorite horse in my barn right now is 3 coming. Well, he's 4 now, technically, that we're in January, but I hack him around this whole equestrian, I don't know, whatever housing community I'm in right now. And people are just floored all the time because I was doing it. I, hacked him a couple times last year because I was considering trying to rush him as a 3-year-old into last year's makeover. So I just like got on him literally like 5 times. And my neighbors were like, how old is this horse again? And it's a thoroughbred and you're out here by yourself on a trail ride. And I'm like, yes, like they.
And he's 3.
And he's 3.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. And I just was like, he's only 3. Allison, just turn him back out. And now he's going to go this year as a 4-year-old. So.
Now, obviously you do lots and lots with horses. Is there something, or are there things that you enjoy outside of the horse world?
If there was more hours in the day, definitely. On a regular basis. Yeah, on a regular basis, not so much. I mean, I have a 2-year-old daughter, so
okay, well,
she takes up my own, and we have our own little farm now. So I'm, having to clean my stalls, and I do everything myself. I don't have any staff or anything, so I tack up, I untack, I clean the stalls, I get on the mower. I do all of it. But if there were infinite hours in the day, I was an art major in college. I graduated with a visual arts degree. I'd probably try to go find some ceramics, studio and throw some pottery and do some stuff. I, enjoy that very occasionally. I'll find a friend to go do like a wheel throwing class with me or something. So if I had time to do that, I'd probably would.
No, understand. Between horses and a 2-year-old, that's pretty much your life right there, huh?
It is. Yeah, it is. But it's
that's
a good
okay.
one.
Yeah, I was going to say that's all right. Nothing wrong with that. All right. Well, we certainly appreciate you taking some time out of your horses and your 2-year-old to talk with us. And best of luck heading towards, training towards this year's thoroughbred makeover. And we'll keep an eye on you, and maybe we'll check back with you later and see how everything's going.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, I am. I'm feeling the burn already. It's only January. I probably could use a couple chill pills between now and October. I get pretty intense about it. As people who know me, I get I'm very competitive, especially when I feel like it's something I'm capable of doing. But yeah, so we'll see. It's especially being in Wellington, this place is like a pressure cooker. So it is that. So yeah. I'm trying to keep my expectations within reason, but it's tough when you live in this town. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, good luck, and we wish you all the best, and we'll be back in touch.
Okay. Thank you, guys. You have a good day.
Thanks. You too.
Thanks for listening to the Dressage Today podcast. If you've missed any episodes or to subscribe, go to Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. While you're there, please rate and review the show. Learn more and read in-depth training articles at dressagetoday.com, or you can visit our subscription video site, ondemand.dressagetoday.com. Be sure to give us a follow on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Happy riding, and we'll see you at X. The Dressage Today podcast is a production of the Equine Podcast Network, an entity of Equine Network, LLC.